We are Unitarian Universalists. We lift up our principles. Some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. We are brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has fallen short of the image that was presented to the world and to many of those who embraced this faith, this religion. But we are also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move toward a place of wholeness, a place that has perhaps never existed for us in this denomination. It has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of that past and because we have hope for the future. We want to practice this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts, seek new ways of understanding. Come, let us worship together. We light our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. The chalice is a cup holding all our hopes and dreams, and a flame burning bright with our love and care.
Good morning. I'm Jenna Kern-Ruggiel. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington's virtual Sunday service. It's good to be together. We are streaming live from multiple locations, so please be patient with any technical mishaps you might see or hear. We are using Zoom's meeting format so we can all see each other. We'd like to extend a special welcome today to visitors who may be joining our virtual service for the first time, as well as any newcomers who are returning. Know that whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you are new to our congregation and want to speak with someone to learn more about us, please contact us by email at office@uufh.org. We'll pull this information in the chat during the service as well. We'll put this information in. We are joined today by Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore, who will lead our service. Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore is Minister for Lifespan Religious Education at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Shelter Rock in Manhasset, New York. Before moving to New York, she was religious educator and parish minister in congregations in Maryland and Virginia. She is the former president of the Liberal Religious Educators Association and member of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. Currently, Reverend Dr. Fenimore is a member of the UUMA Board of Trustees. Reverend Dr. Fenimore is the author of Unitarian Universalist Religious Education Curriculum and Religious Education Renaissance Modules, Meditations, and Readings. Her Doctor of Ministry area of study is narrative theology with an emphasis on story and faith identity development for African American Unitarian Universalists. We have a few brief announcements. Would you like to meet with our new transitions minister, Reverend Dr. Deborah W. Hafner, on Zoom? You'll have a chance to introduce yourself to her, talk about what you love about UUFH, and ask her questions. Yesterday was the first session, and we will be having another on March 1st for up to 25 participants. Additional sessions will be scheduled if we fill up. Sign up on the Sign Up Genius invitation. The link is in this week's flash. If you have any questions, contact Terry Donaldson. To honor Black History Month, St. Anne and the Holy Trinity's Outreach Committee is having a voting rights panel discussion, bringing together legal strategists, advocates, and clergy to discuss what can be done to fix a historically racist voting system. Please join this event to hear a conversation about the history of voter suppression, fixing a broken voting system, and the historic role of the church in delivering souls to the polls. It will be held on Monday, February 28th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. The link is in this week's flash. Contact Nikki Willard for more information. Hi, the Huntington Interfaith Homeless Initiative is still in need of help. There are 3 ways you can currently support Hi. You can sign up to make breakfast, lunches, and/or dinners. The link is in this week's flash. Hi is also in need of donations, including warm winter jackets, blankets, socks, long underwear, and individual serving cups of super noodles that only need hot water added. 3, donate gift cards to Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King, and Taco Bell in $5 denominations, as well as monetary donations to help support the program. Contact Melissa Dinsman if you have donations, and she will provide further details of desired places and drop-off info. Now some information on the endowment funding proposals. The investment committee invites committees and/or individual members to make proposals for funding. Proposals will be funded through our endowment and should be projects or efforts not covered in our fiscal operating budget. Proposals need to be received by the investment committee no later than March 1st, and the investment committee will make recommendations to the board no later than March 31st. Please send proposals to grneber@outlook.com. And finally, Sunday in-person services at the fellowship will resume on Sunday, March 13th, 2022. We will continue our multi-platform offerings so that those who wish to attend in person within our guidelines may do so, and those who do not can enjoy the service via online streaming. Please read the updated guidelines for attending in-person Sunday services located in our weekly flash newsletter and on our website in Reopening News. These policy decisions reflect our desire to keep the most vulnerable among us safe and comfortable while in person at our services. And now I invite you to settle into your bodies and quiet your minds as we breathe together and settle into our time of worship. Please join me in saying our mission statement. The words will be on the screen. In religious community, we nurture our individual spirits through caring for one another and helping to heal the world. Now, please join me in singing our affirmation, Common Ground.
On different roads we travel here to meet as one on common ground, to seek the truth with open minds, with loving hearts and helping hands.
And now a story for all ages, a children's story where Henry Thoreau, the bear, travels with intention.
One summer day, Henry and his friend decided to go to Fitchburg to see the country. "I'll walk," said Henry. "It's the fastest way to travel." "I'll work," Henry's friend said, "until I have the money to buy a ticket to ride the train to Fitchburg. We'll see who gets there first." His friend waved. "Enjoy your walk," he said. Henry walked down the road to Fitchburg. "Enjoy your work," he called back. Henry's friend filled the woodbox in Mrs. Alcott's kitchen. 10 cents. Henry hopped from rock to rock across the Sudbury River. His friend swept out the post office. 5 cents. Henry carved a walking stick. 25 miles to Fitchburg. Henry's friend pulled all the weeds in Mr. Hawthorne's garden. 15 cents. Henry put ferns and flowers in a book and pressed them. His friend painted the fence in front of the courthouse, 10 cents. Henry walked on stone walls. Henry's friend moved the bookcases in Mr. Emerson's study, 15 cents. Henry climbed a tree, 18 miles to Fitchburg. His friend carried water to the cows grazing on the grass in town, 5 cents. Henry made a raft and paddled up the Nassau River. Henry's friend cleaned out Mrs. Thoreau's chicken house, 10 cents. Henry crossed a swamp and found a bird's nest in the grass, 12 miles to Fitchburg. His friend carried flour from the mill to the village baker, 20 cents. Henry found a honey tree. Henry's friend ran to the train station to buy his ticket to Fitchburg, 90 cents. Henry jumped into a pond, 7 miles to Fitchburg. His friend sat on the train in a tangle of people. Henry ate his way through a blackberry patch. Henry's friend got off the train at Fitchburg Station just as the sun was setting. Henry took a shortcut, 1 mile to Fitchburg. His friend was sitting in the moonlight when Henry arrived. The train was faster, he said. Henry took a small pail from his pack. I know, he smiled. I stopped for blackberries. And that is the end of the story about Henry hikes to Fitchburg.
And now I invite us all to sing Spirit of Life. Following the song, we'll enter into a time of silence and then prayer. As you participate at home, remember that it's not about the perfection of silence, but the intention. Join with me in singing now.
In these days of war, we offer prayers for peace in our world. It is so terrible to witness the war in Ukraine and to find ourselves once again worrying about World War III. There are also wars, ongoing wars, terrible wars in Yemen, Syria, Ethiopia. So much senseless death and destruction. And still, we are in the midst of a pandemic. It is almost impossible to hold all the pain. And yet we do hold all the pain, for life goes on. There is still the possibility of peace. There is still hope for justice. And so we pray. We pray that war may end, that peace and justice prevail on earth. And more than pray, may we work to achieve this peace for ourselves, for our children, for the future of this planet. May we come together to work for peace. May it be so.
This is the time in our service when we hold all those tender personal concerns which are close to our hearts this day. I invite you now to speak aloud the names of any whom you would like to lift up into the care of this community, or simply hold them in your heart in silence. Please write the names in the chat box so they may be read out loud. Tom, Margaret and Dan, April, the brave people of Ukraine, Kevin, Ruth Ann, Roz, Elliott, Bill. The people of Ukraine, please know our hearts and minds are with you. To JF, Becky, Adina, and Rob. And Peggy. For these names and all the names written silently on the tablets of our hearts, we pray. Our split plate for the month of February is the Huntington branch of the NAACP. The vision of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, is to ensure a society in which all individuals have equal rights without discrimination based on race. Founded in 1909, the NAACP is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. From the ballot box to the classroom, the thousands of dedicated workers, organizers, leaders, and members who make up the NAACP continue to fight for social justice for all Americans. The Huntington branch works with the state and national NAACP offices to strengthen our commitment to supporting equality and justice in the Huntington community. You can send a check to the office or donate through the website as seen on your screen. You can also donate through the Give Plus Church app, which can be found on the App Store or Google Play. Now a reading by Robert Walsh. I am wondrously wrought, partly shaped by my biology, partly shaped by my culture, and partly self-shaped. I am so wonderfully fashioned that the workings of myself amaze and confuse me. I know I have the power to choose many paths, yet most of the time I am on automatic pilot, acting out of little examined assumptions, values, rituals, myths, appetites, and impulses. I can meet life in many ways. I can be tough-minded. I can be tender-hearted. I can move between activities and quietness. I can express my uniqueness and individuality, and I can forget myself in commitment to family and community. I can judge, I can bear witness to the good and evil around me, and I can forgive. I can analyze, theologize, figure the world out, and I can listen to the still small voice of conscience, intuition, the Holy Spirit. All these ways of meeting life and more are part of the potential that is me, but I am afraid to move very far or very fast from ways that have become comfortable. I seek the self-knowledge that may illuminate new possibilities in life, and I seek the courage to try them. Most of all, I pray for wholeness, for a life in which my many ways of living can be connected and filled with the meaning of holy creation.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are falling fast behind me. My troubles and my glaring drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? Somewhere over the rainbow, over the rainbow. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why
It's a wonderful song. Thank you. And I want to thank you for inviting me to your pulpit. And it was wonderful to see the picture of your space there in Huntington. And I hope that we'll be able to meet in person sometime soon. So, to live deliberately. In 1852, our Unitarian ancestor, Henry David Thoreau, began his 2-year and 2-month stay in a small cabin in the woods alongside Walden Pond outside the town of Concord, Massachusetts. Thoreau gave this as his reason for his stay at Walden. He said, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear, nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck all the marrow out of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put a route to what was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave closely, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms." Now, as with many of our famous historical Concord Unitarians. Thoreau tends to be a character we romanticize. Because you see, he really didn't live in isolation there in Walden Woods. His mom came to do his laundry. He was a real person, a person who was born in 1817 in Concord. His family were prosperous pencil makers, known for making the finest pencils in New England. Although a second son, Henry was more studious than his older brother and went off to Harvard for his education. In the world of Harvard and Concord, Thoreau had friendships and collaborations with Ralph Waldo Emerson, Bronson Alcott, William Hillary Channing, Margaret Fuller, Elizabeth Peabody published his works. The Unitarian transcendentalists we learn about. He also was friends with John Brown and other abolitionists. Thoreau, naturalist, writer, thinker, died of tuberculosis in 1862 at the age of 44. This is the real person Thoreau, who I find most engages me, because it was not obvious, it couldn't be taken for granted that Thoreau, the person, would take the path which led to Walden, or take the path of commitments to abolitionism, anti-war, and environmental efforts that marked his life. How did he get there? How did he become himself? He challenges me, us as well, because he was a real living person who made the choice to live with intention. And even more so, Thoreau sought out a particular strategy for himself, which would support his desire for deliberate living. Thoreau did not find Walden, Thoreau made Walden. He physically built his cabin in the woods. He made the time and the place he needed to reflect on what was important to him about life, what was central, essential, deep, and close. So the question is, what for you is central, essential, deep, and close in your life? In this time of pandemic isolation, when many of us have had to time and time again retreat to physical isolation from one another, and perhaps to be alone inside our own thoughts and worries in this time, have you been able to make a time and space for reflection on how you might best live your life? What would it mean to live deliberately with intention for you and me now? Now, I don't think that this deep reflection requires us to build a cabin in the woods and spend a couple of years away from our normal lives. We've seen that isolation in and of itself can be a terrible thing, not a time of great awakening. In fact, for us now, to have deep reflection might mean a movement deeper into the rhythms of our daily lives, a time of engagement with the things which we do now, which we think and feel, but with a questioning mind, with what the Buddhists call a beginner's mind. With beginner's mind, you drop expectations and preconceived ideas to see things with an open mind, with fresh insights. Like a beginner, we can be curious and filled with wonder. We don't need to expect ourselves to be experts. And yes, we can also acknowledge the frustration, confusion, discomforts, struggles, and anxiety of trying to learn new things, of trying to see old things in new ways, of trying to know and learn things about ourselves and our intentions anew. To have beginner's mind at this time will require great patience, attention, and presence. We will need to embrace gratitude, even in the present moment of struggle and pain. We also have the opportunity to, as one of the sources of our Unitarian Universalist principles asks us, the opportunity to draw from the words and deeds of prophetic people, which encourage us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. In doing this, we can recognize the fullness of the number of prophets who exist around us. Not just the great men we have been taught to admire, but all our prophets, our own elders, our own ancestors. And in these times, we can listen to the prophetic words of all the first responders who have held us in care these long, almost 3 years. The mailman, the nurse, the doctor, the teacher, the grocery store clerk, the person delivering all the packages that have sustained us. Those who have been a lifeline. They have stories to tell from which we may learn. I have no doubt that there are stories of deep and needed wisdom, stories with the transforming power of love. As well as these individual stories, we can engage with the stories of wisdom, courage, resilience, and hope of all the communities around us, especially those who we have considered marginalized in our society. There is learning for everyone in these stories. Thoreau himself sought to learn the wisdom of those who had lived in his woods long before he did. Thoreau knew Walden was once the home of the Massachusetts tribe, 200 years before his time. Despite forced relocations, diseases, and war, there were, in Thoreau's time, still Native people remaining in the wood. Once in 1850, Thoreau visited an encampment of Native peoples, admiring their collapsible moose hide canoe, their salmon spears, their traps, and snowshoes. He knew these were people of the land who knew the land as he wished to. And as the author Elise Lemire writes in her book, Black Walden, Slavery and Its Aftermath, in Concord, Massachusetts, Thoreau looked to the example of the 15 Black formerly enslaved people living in Walden Wood before the Civil War. Thoreau knew about the lives of Brister and Fender Freeman. Brister Freeman gained his freedom after fighting in the Revolutionary War. Zilpah White, Brister's sister, also lived a subsistence farming life in Walden Wood. Thoreau wrote about Brister and Fenda and Zilpah. He knew about their lives in the woods and their quest for independence, their desire for freedom and self-reliance. The Black people of Walden Wood fought to live deliberately, to live on their own terms, to own their own land and tend their own small plots. They did not leave legal slavery, which was abolished in Massachusetts in 1780, in order to take up a place as unpaid or underpaid laborers in the household of former slave owners. Their lives in Walden Woods, freedom was short. Hard labor, hostile neighbors, malnutrition, and illness led to the deaths and the disappearance of the community in one generation. Still, Thoreau and those around Walden knew the stories of these people. Some say Thoreau went to the woods to replicate some of the ways of Zilpah White. He probably could not truly understand the suffering of these people. His sojourn at Walden Pond was much, much more physically comfortable, even as it was spiritually deep and challenging. As Thoreau looked to Zilpah White as an example of a prophetic voice, we may find ourselves in turn looking to Thoreau because we know his life so much better. It has been passed down to us and is well known. We hear him, we read his writing, we know of his life's challenge, his challenge to us. The busyness of life, he thought, the frenetic pace of our jobs, the demands to make more money, to seek status which we may never find. He asked us that these things should never be the exclusive focus of our living. How can we make sure that these immediate concerns of our daily lives do not overwhelm the truly important things of our life? How can we be sure that we have truly lived, that we are not weighted down by what may in the end be found to be lesser matters, lesser concerns? This focus on the big questions in life does not mean, though, ignoring life's details. Indeed, Thoreau noticed the details, but the details about what was important, the details about what things marvel us, what inspires us, what feeds our soul. Another learning from Thoreau we might bring into our lives is the art of observation. As a naturalist, Thoreau kept detailed journals that are used even today to chart the natural history of Walden Pond and Walden Wood. When Thoreau died, Ralph Waldo Emerson said in his eulogy that his friend had the habit of ascertaining the measures and distances of objects which interested him, the size of trees, the depth and extent of ponds and rivers, the height of mountains, the airline distance of his favorite summit. He could pace 16 rods more accurately than another man could measure them with rod and chain. Using another Buddhist term, this is a kind of mindfulness. Indeed, the Unitarian transcendentalists studied the religions born in India, and they sought to be connected to the rhythms of the natural world in a way that refreshed their spirits. We can try to live deliberately, live with intention, live with courage, live with conviction. Use beginner's mind to seek to determine what is important and essential in our lives. Listen to the stories and learnings from individuals and communities which can provide guidance and wisdom to you. Open your ears and hearts to ever wider circles of stories. You may glimpse miracles which are all around. Deeply observe. Use mindfulness to engage with life's wonders and intentions. Give your time and attention to living deliberately. It is a long process, lifelong. Connect your intentions then with actions in your lives and with actions out in the world. After leaving Walden, Thoreau engaged in civil disobedience, supported abolition, lived deliberately out in the world. So find ways, make ways to be intentional in your love for yourself and your precious life. Then connect and extend deliberately your reverence for your own life to the lives of others, to the life of humans on this earth. Give love, feel love, know love, be love, intentionally, deliberately. I know this can be challenging work, and in the midst of a pandemic, it can seem like one more hard task, but this is needed and holy work. It is ministry, ministry to self and ministry to the world. In closing, I offer these words from the poet Mary Oliver, which no doubt Thoreau would have appreciated. Oliver writes, I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do not know how to pay attention. I do know how to pay attention, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? As benediction, I say, embrace your life with intention. and love deliberately. So may it be.
Now, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful
Thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to Reverend Dr. Fenimore for a very inspiring sermon. If you'd like to participate in Fellowship Hour, please stay on the Zoom and we'll see you there. Have a wonderful Sunday.